Hello, good evening. I am Ajit Kumar Jha, CEO of Power Pixar Channel. And today, in the public global debate, I'm planning to focus on higher education in India, a very neglected field by the Modi government. Um, in fact, India was known for its higher education in the past. And as a result, we had you know a sort of, one would say, um, streams of Indian students going abroad and being accepted by some of the top universities in the West. I myself have studied at the University of Oxford in England, um, and the University of California, Los Angeles. And later on, I even went and did another course in media management at the University of British Columbia in Canada. So I've studied in universities in three countries: the UK, the USA, and Canada. And from that vantage point, let me point out that among the various reforms that the Modi government has done, the weakest one, um, I would claim, is the education policy. The new education policy is a total disaster in practice. Whatever the details of it in principle, but all that they are doing in the last 10 years, all they have managed to do is experimenting from a 3-year undergraduate to a 4-year undergraduate. It started, during it started in Delhi University during the previous vice chancellor. He switched from a 3-year to a 4-year undergraduate. Then all the teachers had to do so much preparations for it, so many changes for the students. And then again, they went back to the 3 years. And now again, they are talking about switching to a 4-year undergraduate. Now, what is this? Is this a joke? 3 years undergraduate or 4 years undergraduate? In masters now, 1 year masters or 2 years masters after the 4-year undergraduate. Uh, should then they got then they did away with MPhil, masters in philosophy, which used to be basically 1.5 to 2 years right after the MA program when we were students. In fact, I had gone to Oxford to do a MPhil MLit program, and then I went for a doctorate, a PhD at the University of California. So the significance of MPhil, for example, was to equip the student with the research methodology which would be used for in the PhD when you write your doctoral dissertation. The Americans, when they do a PhD, there is a master's program integrated to it. So technically, when you get admission in PhD, you do 2 years of master's in any American university, in which you do 4 courses every semester minimum. So in 2 years, you end up doing 16 courses. In many universities, even higher number of courses. But they did away with the MPhil program. The masters, they are experimenting, as I pointed out, 1 year or 2 years. Should you go into direct PhD right after BA or after 1 year MA? I mean, it's a tamasha out in the education ministry, in the UGC, in the various sort of departments that are connected with higher education. And no one is responsible. You don't know who to basically point your finger at. Let me start with some statistics. What is happening in higher education? In the year 2025, which is next year, $70 billion US, $70 billion will be spent by Indian students to study abroad. Can you imagine the amount? 70 billion US dollars. If I break it down with the present exchange rate in India right now, which is almost equivalent to 84.8168 rupees. You know that the dollar has been strengthening and the rupee has been weakening. So I just gave you today's figures. Then what we are talking about in terms of just rupees is such a big amount that it is difficult to basically quantify. Let me point out the exact amount. It turns out to be, or it is equal to almost 5937176,000 rupees. It's more than it's almost trillions of rupees. I just gave you the figures right here. Now that is the amount, as I said, 70 billion US dollars will be spent by Indian students who are going abroad. What is the exact number of Indian students studying abroad right now? The latest figures that I have, it's the AISHE figures of 2021-2028. That's the last estimate we have. Remember, this is post-COVID. The number of foreign students studying in India is less than 50,000. Just 46,878 students, foreign students, mainly from Africa and other Asian countries, are studying in India. And what is the number of Indian students who are studying abroad? I'm giving you the latest Ministry of External Affairs figures. 1.33 million Indian students, which works out to 13.3 lakhs of Indian students are studying abroad. According to one estimate, in the next 2 years, which is by 2027 actually, we will have more than 20 lakh Indian students going abroad to study. Why is this happening? Why are we losing Indian students in such big numbers going to various countries to study? As I pointed out, I studied abroad as well, and I gave you I spent almost 11 years studying abroad, but I went on scholarships. I went on scholarships to England, I went on scholarships to the US, and a scholarship to Canada. And all these scholarships were not from the Indian government. I got the INLACS, a private scholarship to go to England. I got the Chancellor Fellowship and Teaching Assistantship to study in the US. And I got the Lead Fellowship to go and graduate in Canada. What about Indian students? The amounts that I mentioned, 13.3 lakhs today, and the estimated, let's say, 20 lakhs by 2027. Majority of them are not on scholarship. They are actually getting money either from their parents or they are borrowing from the banks. Banks, they need to shell out money to people. So therefore, they have become very liberal giving out the money. How much of that money comes back to the banks is another question, which I at this moment don't know. But the banks liberally give out the money. Students take huge loans because you must remember, for example, many American university, UCLA, it's a public university, by the way, and the fees plus the expenses of the student works out to 70,000 US dollars per year. So if you're doing an undergraduate of 4 years, 7 4s are 28. You're practically spending $300,000 to just get an undergraduate degree from UCLA. If you are doing any kind of master's, which is another 2 years, then if you do a PhD, American universities sometimes PhDs can take much more than 5 years. Sometimes they stretch to 7 years, 8 years. The entire funding is a huge amount. And this money, in a way, is a drain, because majority of these students today, I went to England, America, Canada, but returned back to India to work here. Majority of the students that are going, they just leave, they just go away. In Hindi, we call it palayan. They just leave the country. Almost, you talk to any of my friends, I ask them, all the children are studying abroad. No one wants to study in Indian universities. What is the reason? The main reason is whatever standards we had in the Indian universities, the IITs, the IIMs, great universities like Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi University, Jamia Millia in Delhi, for example, Calcutta Presidency College, now Presidency University, Jadavpur University in West Bengal, similarly Madras, Bombay, all the top metros have excellent universities. Anna University, where I have lectured in the past, in Chennai, extraordinary university. But students are not wanting to go there. What is the main reason? The main reason, according to me, is total decline of standards in higher education in the universities. What is happening? Political interference. Take, for example, Jawaharlal Nehru University. The number of faculty that has been hired in the last, since Mr. Prime Minister Modi has come, those faculties are, frankly speaking, they don't have the intellectual caliber or standards of the professors who were, or assistant professors or associate professors who were hired in the past. Why? Because now the stress is that even in the universities, they want to teach courses that not the regular courses that were taught in the past. The stress is to teach some new courses which is going to highlight our history. Now, the funny thing is, there is not a single good book written by any of these people who claimed that they will teach a new kind of what they call sophisticated history. The best books in history are still written by professors who were teaching in these universities in the past. And these are very high standards. They match the standards of history books written at Harvard, Cambridge, Oxford, University of California, Berkeley, UCLA, Chicago, and others. But for some reason, this political agenda of trying to teach an alternative thinking in the universities, they have produced ludicrous texts. In Delhi University, as the story goes, hiring recently in colleges, to become a lecturer, you have to actually pay underhand money. And I have heard estimates from Delhi University professors, many of them who are actually part of the so-called Sangh and sort of BJP-minded professors. They are claiming that it started with 23 lakhs per assistant professor's position and now has moved to 40 lakhs. This is a total scam going on, and no one is paying attention to that. This had never happened in the past. Delhi University colleges used to have some of the highest standards of education, but today that is not the case. The same thing is happening in each and every university. I've talked to several professors at IITs in Chennai, in Delhi, Kanpur, Kharagpur. They tell me that everything has changed. All the appointments are political. Whatever the experts point out never takes place. Same thing in JNU. What the expert says, no one listens to. Experts are called. Departmental heads are called during interviews. But what they recommend is never heard. On their own, people are hiring. And you might be being appointed in a subject, let's say like political science or economics, but your degree is in some other subject from a third-rate university. You cannot write English. There is a new bias against the English language. So you have to say everything in Hindi. And even in Hindi, I speak Hindi, read and write very well. I come from the Hindi heartland. I even read and write Maithili and Bengali. I have yet to see a serious book in any subject that I study, any subject of social science, by any of these so-called alternative people who claim that they are going to rewrite history. It's just pathetic. It's just WhatsApp history. It's and facts are not checked at all. And therefore, if you talk to the students, which I do all the time, I go and take classes in Jamia, in JNU, I have taken, even in some of the private universities in Delhi, I have taken classes. Earlier, I used to teach in Times School of Journalism, in LSR, in several other colleges of Delhi University. I am shocked to find how frustrated the students are. All the students I talk to right after school, they do not want to study in India anymore. They just run away abroad. And now they face a bigger problem. Why? Because Canada-India relations have gone rock bottom. So Canada has stopped. Canada was, in fact, in the last few years, highest number of Indian students were going to Canada for higher studies. My son, for example, has also went to Canada, and he now works there. Almost lots and lots of young children I met, they were going to Canada. In fact, the latest figures I had heard was anywhere between 2.5 to 3.5 lakh Indian students going to Canada alone. Now, that has been shut down because of this India-Canada relation, which has hit rock bottom. And Canada is not accepting Indian students this year in numbers anywhere near in the past. Same thing is going to happen to US. Why? Because Donald Trump is going to be the next president. Donald Trump wants to put a cap on immigration. Immigration of outsiders, including Indians, illegal immigration, as well as immigration in general. There is a atmosphere where foreigners have started being hated in the US today. Pretty bad situation there. And as a result, the number of Indian students applying to the US, that is going to go down. In fact, you've had newspapers writing articles on that, the fear among Indian students that they're going to cut numbers in the US. England, where I went to study to begin with, doesn't have that number of universities like, for example, the US. There are fewer number of universities. And again, in England, for a while in between, they were hardly taking Indian students because education was facing various challenges in UK. Somehow those numbers increased during the prime ministership of Rishi Sunak. And whether those numbers will continue or not, we do not know. But the problem in English universities are that once you pass out, the economy of England is not that great. They are not able to absorb those students in terms of jobs. Australia is the only country left among the English-speaking countries where Indian students have started going in big numbers. Germany has, for example, opened almost 1 lakh position for Indian students. Germany is a great place to study. Why? Because the fees is very low there. Germany still sort of maintains a very high educational standards with public universities, government-run universities, so the fees is very low. But the bigger problem is you need to learn the German language. At least 1 year, 2 year course initially is around learning the German language. There are some English programs in certain German universities, but in order to stay there for a long time, let's say a PhD program or something like that, you need to learn German. It's the same problem with other European countries where you might have to learn the language. For example, in France, French; in Japan, let's say Japanese. If you want to go to Japan, that is, or some of the other countries. For a long time, a lot of Indian students were going to study medicine and other engineering subjects in China, But that has also declined, given the fact that India, China did not have the best of relations in recent years. So Indian students are really frustrated. They do not want to study in Indian universities because they do not like the politicization going on in the campuses. No, talk about infrastructure. There is no attempt to beef up the infrastructure. The JNU VC goes around publicly saying that she has no funds. So therefore, whatever infrastructure existed is declining. In Delhi University, the talk of corruption, the new teachers, no one wants to study under them. It's the same situation in the rest of the country. And the Bharatiya Janata Party's government, the Modi government, is not at all bothered. They talk of new education policy. They talk of links with American campuses. How can you link with American campuses if the focus is not on English? How can you, all the American universities, they have a Hindi program if you want to study Hindi, but it's run in English. So in order to have a program with them, you need the best programs in English. All the subjects need to be taught in English. Even if you teach in the vernacular, the standards have to be high because the American universities have some of the highest standards in the world. Let me give you a little brief, sort of 30 seconds history of American universities. Till the 1900, until the year 1900, American universities were not considered the best universities in the world. It was the European universities from England, Oxford, Cambridge, London School of Economics, Imperial College London. In Germany, for example, Heidelberg, Göttingen. These were the top universities in the world. What happened is, after 1900, at one time, American universities were only famous because of basketball and baseball, because that's what used to bring in the money. After 1900, the policy changed. The American government started funding higher education in a massive way. And at the same time, while they were funding, they made no political interference in the syllabuses of these campuses. The entire syllabus making, the entire content of education was left to the faculty, to the professors, to the educationists. And so therefore, no political interference, but massive funds were put into the universities. And that made the American universities some of the, in the top 100, some of the top, let's say 30, 40, 50 would be from America. That is why Stanford, Harvard, UCLA, UC Berkeley, Chicago, Cornell, these became Ivy League American universities, became the places where people wanted to go and study. Faculty even from Europe would go, want to join their faculty. But in India, we are following the opposite. The funding is being cut, as the JNU Vice Chancellor keeps talking. There is no fund to spend on infrastructure. It's the same thing with other universities. You talk to any Vice Chancellor and they will tell you that the funding is being cut massively in education. And at the same time, massive political interference. You want to rewrite history, you want to rewrite all the social sciences and every other subject. This is destroying Indian education, and the frustration is among the students, among the faculty. So to sum it all up, today, Indian students are just running away abroad wherever they can. In fact, the number of Indian students trying to enter Eastern Europe, trying to go to islands in the Atlantic, which were never at one time known to be great universities. They are even prepared to go to Gulf countries, Qatar, for example, where I spent some years. There, the Qatar Foundation, for example, has something close to a dozen Ivy League campuses, including Weill Cornell for medicine, including, for example, uh, yeah, Georgetown for diplomacy, Northwestern for journalism, and so on and so forth. And India, when you go to the campuses, my wife, in fact, ended up writing, my wife, who's a professor of political science, ended up writing her book while she was in Qatar, because because the library was so brilliant over there, so rich. Whenever I would go with her, the highest number of students I saw there were Indian students. Very few Arab students, mostly Indian students would go there from India. So the point I'm trying to make is Indian students are trying to go abroad wherever they can. They want to avoid Indian universities. Why? Because many of us who at one time were educated until my master's, my BA, even my +2, I studied in Indian universities, and from there I was able to get the scholarship to go abroad. Today, these are not the centers of excellence anymore, either for research or for teaching. And the blame lies, according to me, on the NDA government, because the decline is sharp in the last 10 years. Before that, Delhi School of Economics, for example, was one of the great centers of economics. You had Nobel laureates like Professor Amartya Sen used to teach at one time in Delhi School of Economics. Professor Jagdish Bhagwati used to teach at the Delhi School of Economics. That is how it started. When Jawaharlal Nehru became the Prime Minister, he brought all the top ranking professors from all around the world, personally went and brought them to teach in Indian universities, and there the standards were set. And today it is total decline. So this video I have made is basically lamenting what the students in India face. Students who are in colleges, in universities, they're our children, they are our future. If we destroy their future by political interference, by cutting funds in higher education, and they run away abroad, then it's a great loss for the future of India. Please do subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much. And we will make many more such programs in the future. Thank you.